He was born, raised, and continues to live in Knoxville. He attended the University of Tennessee, completing his BS in Wildlife and Fisheries in 1990. He then attended Eastern Kentucky University from 1990 to 1992, where he studied movements and habitat preferences of white-tailed deer. Finally, he returned to UT, where he studied PCB and mercury contamination in great blue herons, graduating with an MS in 1999. He took and passed his certified nurseryman course in 1998 while managing a garden center. He was selected as the Conservation Educator of the Year in 2019 by the Tennessee Wildlife Federation and currently runs the Forestry, Wildlife, and Fisheries program at Cleveland State Community College.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you all for asking. So, very informal, I have a formal program set up. I do this in my first week of Flora and Fauna, and we talk about invasive plants, so it works out great because I just finished this section up. But I want to talk to you a little bit about invasive plants and a real problem we have with people that continue to purchase and plant invasive plants. And I've given everybody a handout, and that handout has several different items on it. So the first link that you have on there is from the Tennessee Invasive Plant Council. And if you go to this link, and I can go to it if you want me to, it tells all the plants that are invasive in Tennessee. It lists them by ground cover, forb, shrub, tree. They're sorted out, and you can see them. Some of them will surprise you. The second one is a series of links for nurseries close to us where you can buy native plants to landscape with rather than going to Lowe's or Home Depot or any other garden center and buying these invasive ones. And then the next three are just general information. Landscape with native plants from Tennessee Naturalist. Another blog of native plants, and then Tennessee State Parks, Landscape with native plants. So these are things put out by several state organizations to help you landscape with it. And then finally, down there at the bottom is a link to this publication. It's a management guide for invasive plants of southern forests. And this is put out by the U.S. Forest Service. And this has actual specific techniques for controlling invasive plants, identifying them, things along those lines. This is a free download at that link. You can download the PDF of it and have it on your computer or what have you at home. Very good guide. It's a very good guide. So that link will take you to that one. And you can download it. But anyway, so welcome to Cleveland State Community College. And what will this time next year should be the Craig A. Bible Center for Natural Resources and Conservation. They're closing this building in December, and it will be remodeled and open up next August, and it will look totally different. But anyway, also we're going to talk a little bit about invasive plants, obviously. And then we're going to go see some of the worst invasive plants in our area. It's not hard to find them. And I chose this building because I can go 10 feet across the road, and there's all of them that we want to look at. Okay. And then finally, we're going to talk about some native alternatives to invasive plants. So before we get there, though, what is an invasive plant? When we talk about plants, we have to separate them into those that have no natural controls. Thus, they grow uncontrolled. Now, we do have aggressive plants, too, I'll talk about in a little bit, that are native. But invasive plants, we're generally talking about non-natives. Come on in. I'm going to give you a handout and a card, too.
My apologies.
No problem.
I can't follow directions.
So typically what we're talking about when we say invasive plant, we're talking about an exotic, something not native to this region, that will outcompete plants around it. So it's not just an exotic plant, it's an exotic plant that will outcompete native plants around it or other plants around it. As compared, and so bringing that up, not all non-native plants are invasive. Some of them stay where you put them. So let me think of one for example. I don't know, I deal with all invasives. Let me think. And non-native, sawtooth oak. Everybody knows what a sawtooth oak tree is? It's a non-native tree, but it doesn't take over. You can plant it, and yes, it'll produce acorns. You may get a sprig in it, but it won't take over. So it's not an invasive plant, even though it's exotic. Wrong way. And let's skip the slide. Maybe I didn't. So when we think about this, we can have native plants too that aren't exotic, they're native, but they're aggressive. So we have to be very careful with that. So invasive, non-native will take over, aggressive, native, but will still take over.
Is Creeping Charlie a native?
No.
No? Okay.
No, it's not. An example of some of these, I rented this once. Anybody have chocolate mint? Not native, invasive, and extremely aggressive.
Keep it in a pot.
Didn't help. Go out of the pot, down the ground, and it's on the ground. Fire was the only thing to keep it where it's supposed to be. Okay, but
I hadn't had that one.
so we do have some native plants that are very aggressive. We have some native honeysuckles that can be aggressive. We have some native trees that can be very aggressive. For example, black walnuts. Black walnuts,
Oh, yes.
kill everything around them.
Got those.
So they can be aggressive. They're not invasive plants. So we don't just think because it's aggressive, it's invasive. Now, so that means that there are not always, native plants don't necessarily make the best choice for your garden because they can't be too aggressive. So there may be some non-natives you want. We're going to focus on the ones that aren't invasive, the ones that will stay where you put them and not get out and about. That makes sense? I hope. So I'm giving you a handout. This is where do you find native plants for your garden. There are several native plant nurseries. Back when I started learning all about this, the only one that existed was in Vonore, and it was my botany professor at UT. He had a native plant nursery, and you could go in, you could take a class. He had all these native plants. He'd teach you how to make cuttings and give you the plants to take home with them. The one I took home was a climbing hydrangea. It's a very aggressive plant, even though it's native. I thought this would look great on my deck. It now covers 2 sides of my deck, and if I'm not careful, it takes over my grills if I don't trim it back. So it wasn't the best choice, but it is a nice plant. So those links give you access to several native nurseries in our area. But anyway, so thinking about these, the biggest problem we have now, and I'm going to go out of this and go to some web pages. Many areas we have are severely impacted by invasive exotic plants. And most people don't even know that they are exotic or that they are invasive because they've been here longer than you have. So I'm going to back out for just a second and give an example or two. Have you ever heard of Japanese steelgrass?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the range of Japanese steelgrass. And do you see that little red star in the middle of it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that little red star is?
Knoxville?
It is
It's in the
Knoxville.
Knoxville, yeah.
It's actually a nature park now called Iams Nature Park. It was introduced there in the early 1900s as packing material. And now it occurs everywhere there's green. We'll see some out back in a few minutes. We're never going to be rid of it. So what we want to do is manage it. And I'll talk about how some of these get managed. We're never going to be rid of Japanese steelgrass. We're never going to be rid of most of these invasive species.
Or kudzu.
Or kudzu. Now, Japanese steelgrass was an accidental introduction. So differentiate between those two. It was accidental. It was sent as packing material, just the dead grass, sent as packing material, but the seeds were in it, and it started right there, and then seeds get spread and spread and spread and spread. And they love disturbance. So if you pull one up, you'll get 10 back. Okay. The seeds lie dormant in the soil for decades, so you're not going to be rid of them. Another one?
Privet.
Oh,
Privet hedge.
I got that.
the vein, privet.
So if we look at the range of Chinese privet,
Oh my.
you can see it's pretty much all over the southeast.
Yeah.
Now, the thing
Is
about
that because nobody's moved it much, or is it just it won't grow out in the west?
out west is too dry for it. Okay, up north the winters are too harsh for it. So it is being controlled somewhat by environmental factors. But as our climate changes, that range can expand. Now, again, this one I can still go to Lowe's right now, or Home Depot, or any other commercial garden center and buy it in 5-gallon pots.
They sell privet.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
It's a hedge, they grow it as a hedge.
I haven't either.
Several years, about 15 years ago, I moved into a house and I always tear the exotic plants out and plant back native plants. So I tore out 2 big privet bushes and I just leaned them on the fence. So I'll haul them off later. 8 months later, I came back and they were still just fine. They had been dug up, roots exposed to the air, and they were just fine living
They
like
were
that.
happy.
They were just fine. So it's next to impossible to kill. And this is another one that thrives on disturbance. And it's very easily spread by birds. The berries, the birds love them. And so what we typically get around here is when we go into a timber stand treatment, we thin the woods any at all, the birds bring it in, and you end up a privet hedge. About 12, 15 feet tall under your trees, and that's all you have growing under there. We're never going to eradicate it again. When we're managing these, and I'm talking about state and federal level, we focus on those areas on the outside. So South Florida, far west Texas, up in the north, Illinois, Indiana, up in there, that's where we'd focus on. We're never
They
going to
just
be rid of it.
you just gave up on Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, it's just like country, we'll never get rid of it there. There's no sense in even trying. There, we try to manage it in spots. So let's go to some that are
Yeah.
a little less common. I'm trying to think of a good one here. I'll come to him.
Yeah, I don't like his stinky stuff either.
Oh,
So let's think about this one for a minute. Notice nothing in the west except California. California, and the light blue are the areas where it has escaped into the wild. The dark blue just indicates the states it's in. What are in those places in light blue in California?
Cities.
Big cities, big developments. These are huge landscape plants. When I was certified nurseryman, my job was to sell plants to landscapers. Every landscape plant I ever looked at had Nandina on it. Every one of them. Why would landscapers love Nandina so much?
Because they're easy to grow, they
Yeah, you
don't
can't kill
require maintenance,
You
right?
cannot kill them. You can try and they won't die. You
Berries.
cannot kill them. So if I'm going in and I'm planting your new house, and I'm gonna guarantee my plants for a year, that's the perfect one for me to put in.
You're not gonna have a loss.
I'm not gonna have a loss. I'll never have to replace that plant. But with native plants, I may have to. So a lot of these are like that. And then we'll go back to our Bradford pears.
So is horsetail a type of bamboo?
No.
No.
No, it's actually in a phylum called Equisetum. It's a very, very primitive plant, and it is a native plant.
Oh,
It is
well,
a native plant. Equisetum is native.
well, I have a lovely native garden that's growing places I don't want it to.
Really?
Oh, I'll take some of your horsetail.
You'll take some horsetail?
Yeah.
My suggestion is keep it in a pot, but I'll be happy to give you some.
Yeah. Horsetail loves,
It's growing up under the sidewalk into the other parts of the yard. Yeah.
Well, you can just break it
Must
into
be
pieces
aggressive
and
then.
stick that in there.
they're typically not that aggressive,
Really?
really.
You've got good dirt. You've done that.
Yeah, they require a very, very rich soil. But, I get excited when I run into horsetails out in the woods because they tell me I have a very rich cove-like basin and, a moist microclimate.
Horsetail likes a lot of water too,
A lot of water, yeah. A rich, thick humus that holds a lot of moisture. This is the calorie pear range where he's been documented in the wild.
What
I'm
kind
sure.
of pear?
Calorie pear, Bradford pear. So when we talk about Bradford pears, every tree you buy in the store is actually a grafted tree. And so the top is one species and the roots are a different one. And where the problem comes in is when those roots start sprouting. The top's supposed to be sterile, and it very well may be. But if those roots sprout, that's not sterile. And they will spread. And so if you look at Bradford pears placed planted in your yard, they're missing the thorns. But the wild stock has them. And they do escape. They're not sterile. The seeds can be spread very easily. And I'd say that range may be really close to where all it's spread. You can pick Bradford pears out. It's what I call a 60-mile-an-hour tree. They're the first thing to bloom in the spring. So you're driving down the road, that white bloom in the middle of the interstate, that's Bradford pear. That white bloom up on the side of the mountain is Bradford pear. 60 miles an hour, you can pick them out. And some people say they stink. I can't smell them,
Oh, they just.
but I'm a biologist. I can't smell those things. But yeah, Bradford pears, again, still being sold as far as I know. I know some states are starting to outlaw the sale of them. They're still being sold, and they weren't really a good tree.
Now, is the Cleveland pear any different?
The Cleveland Select pear is different.
Oh, it is.
It is different. The Cleveland Select, one, it doesn't split.
Okay,
It has a much more uniform growth form between trees, and it doesn't spread like the Bradford pear does.
oh, it does.
So it is a much better choice, the Cleveland pear is. But if I wanted to plant that, if you want to get that look, plant a real pear tree. Still has white blooms, but now it produces nice fruit. You gotta keep it pruned back, but, a real pear tree, a fruit tree would be better off for you.
But do pears grow in this area?
Oh, yeah.
Do they?
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, my church has one. The church is on a triangle piece of land, and there was a little waste space at the end with two sidewalks came there. Somebody planted a pear tree there years ago, and it's just loaded every year with
Really?
pears. So, but there's lots of these, and as I said, with things like microstegium, they were an accidental introduction. Nobody intended for that to happen. But on many of these, they're intentional introductions. And this really began probably 150 plus years ago. As people would travel the world, they'd see a plant that they thought was pretty. They had the means, so they would bring that plant back with no thoughts about what repercussions those could be. And that really continued up until probably the 1980s. Nobody really thought about the repercussions of things going there. One that I used to suggest planting is a wildlife manager.
Oh, I had experience with autumn olive. Oh my God,
Ugly Agnes.
that was awful.
Autumn olive is the genus Elaeagnus. They have these white spots all over them, and they look kind of weird from a distance, so I remember it as Ugly Agnes. But we used to recommend, I have written management plans for property owners to plant this bush for wildlife cover and food, and it is fantastic wildlife cover and
That's why
food.
we planted it originally. It was for
And what is it called?
Autumn olive.
Autumn olive.
The problem is it's extraordinarily aggressive,
Oh.
and if you don't keep it cut back, it will literally take over any open space.
Oh.
I've seen it take over 10-acre fields in 2 years.
Oh.
Because on our management areas, the wildlife managers used to plant it along the road because it'd form a really thick hedge, great food for the birds, things like that, and it'd keep people from poaching from the roads. But if they didn't go in and mow that field twice a year, it would take over the whole field. So this is one that, 15 feet. Yeah. It did a great job, but it did it too well. It was too
Is it
aggressive.
really olives or is it like a fruit?
It's like a little berry.
It's very.
It's on autumn olive, Russian olive. It's got a couple other names. But they sell them in the garden centers as Elaeagnus. They don't call them autumn olive or Russian olive. They call them Elaeagnus by their genus name. And people plant them because it has a nice silvery underside of the leaf, so the wind blows. It's nice and silver. Produces a pretty red berry on it, but they're extraordinarily aggressive, and they're still being sold. So a lot of these are sold for the characteristics they have. We just didn't know how bad they were until we got them into a few areas. Some others, if I can spell it. That's with an S. You've probably seen this one growing out and about. Serratia lespedeza.
What is it?
Serratia lespedeza.
Does it have a common name?
Serratia. I don't know the common name. These are planted oftentimes on old road beds or along roads when they need something fast to control erosion. Because it would grow on this floor if I spread the seeds.
Really?
It would. It would grow anywhere. In mining strip pits where they reclaim the mines and stuff, it's very common because the ground's so compacted from heavy machinery, nothing else will grow. This will grow. On gravel roads, this will grow. But it grows an extremely dense mat, and then it spreads, and it will take over again. It's very aggressive, very, very tough. You can't really break it even. So it will form these dense thickets like this that you can't even walk through. You can't get your legs through there, and it's about waist high. But this is still planted by our Department of Transportation because it grows very quickly. They don't have to water it. It's going to grow, and it's going to hold the soil, but you're not going to get rid of it then. So some of them are still planted. Sericia is one of those that's on that Tennessee Invasive Plant Council websites, but it's still planted by the state of Tennessee.
So it's on TDOT's approved list of plants for erosion control.
Right.
What about switchgrass or something? Couldn't they use something different?
They could absolutely use switchgrass, but the problem with switchgrass, I'm gonna go in and mow it. This is gonna get waist high. It's not gonna block any traffic views.
Oh,
It's gonna do the job. Switchgrass is gonna get 8 to 10 feet high. They're gonna have to mow it. And then if it mats down, another thing too, with things like switchgrass, even though it's native, switchgrass is a fire danger. When it dries out, it burns very well. This doesn't, or not as well. And that brings me to another big problem with invasive plants. Our ornamental grasses. This is Kogon grass. Things like Kogon grass, pampas grass, zebra grass, things along those lines. You go buy it's ornamental grass. It's great for a container if you cut the seed heads off before they mature. But the seed heads, they release the seeds and they blow. And they will take everything over. If you leave here today and you go this way on this road back here, you'll notice what looks like a pretty barren bank. They had that bank slated to be planted in ornamental grasses. And I nixed that. Now, so we want a native wildflower mix back there.
Nice.
Oh, well, it's not as pretty. I don't care. Okay, we're not going to put ornamental grasses back there. And one are a fire hazard, two are going to spread. So it doesn't look good right now, but give it a few years and it will be a pretty bank with native wildflowers. But a lot of people don't realize this. You go to the store and you buy it, it's held to grow great in your zone. It's fantastic. They don't tell you the fire hazards, things along those lines. Use that Tennessee Native or Invasive Plant Council webpage and check everything you buy. Everything. 'Cause I can go to Lowe's right now, I can buy Japanese honeysuckle. I can buy the ornamental grasses. I don't know if they're still selling Bradford pears. That's kind of on its way out. Trying to think what else. Periwinkle, common periwinkle is invasive. I don't know. It's been a long day. My brain's not working.
So what you're telling us is really, we need to be thinking beyond our yard.
Exactly.
Because I have zebra grass in my yard and it's never been anywhere except for the one place that I put it. But who knows where way beyond my yard there's zebra grass popping up because a little bird is flown overhead.
Or the wind is blowing. With grasses, they're windborne seeds, so they'll blow. And right now, I don't know if anybody has goldfinches in their yard,
Yes.
but there's goldfinches, they spread all those seeds.
I have them at school, a lot of them.
I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and go outside before it rains right here, because it's getting dark. This has all made its way here from somewhere else. So as we look down through here, we got lots and lots of privet, and privet's pretty easy to pick out, but I want to show you a couple of others that have made their way in here as well. So we're going to look right down here to start with. It's another tree people buy, what do they call it?
Mimosa.
It is a mimosa. They sell it in the store as a Chinese fringe tree.
Yeah.
Got a pretty little pink bloom on it.
Yeah.
This tree was not here 3 or 4 years ago. There was a patch of them on that hill down there that we've removed, but this one has made its way here. It will be removed before too long. They produce millions of seeds a year. That's one coming along
There
here.
used to be several around there.
Right here is another invasive plant that was common at one time in gardens.
Mahone, is that
Mahoney,
Oregon?
Oregon grape. So it's all down through this edge right here.
That's invasive.
It's invasive. So
Its kind of leaf is up next
Right
to
here.
it.
Uh-huh.
it's called a leather leaf mahoney. I'll show you why.
I like to look at it. Oh, they're pretty for Christmas.
They're gorgeous. The fruit is, the flower's yellow. The fruits are like a purple grape called leather leaf because extremely tough. And they used to be planted under windows to prevent people from breaking into a house, feel those points.
Oh, right. No
They-
robber wants to climb over that.
Right. It's not like a holly. A holly tree will break. This won't. This is tough. Okay. But again, those little grape-like fruits, birds spread them. So notice where I'm showing you all these right in the edge, right where the birds come and roost at night. So privet, Another leaf mahonia. We've got the mimosa that blew in here. We're going to walk on down this way, and I'll show you a few more. Yeah, this is the Ceretia coming up right here.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, it's a very, very tough plant. Nothing eats it. Nothing browses it. So there's really nothing to control it. There's no insects on it. It does produce a fine little seed that's good for some birds. That's about it. So
We went camping up Chiahawi, and we went on several hikes, and I saw
yeah, so it gets
to do
spread.
that along the road.
Gets spread everywhere. The roadsides is where
Uh-huh.
you probably gonna see it. That's Ceretia right there. Again, more fruit. I'm gonna go up and get this and bring it back to you. I don't mind cutting invasive species down.
Oh, Nandina.
A little
Nandina.
Nandina.
At one time, this side of the administration building, that whole bank was Nandina's. Now, Nandinas, one, they're hard to kill. Two, they're very aggressive and they spread very easily. But the biggest thing about Nandinas, you know the red berries they produce? They're toxic to birds.
You know, I've had somebody tell me that, but I've never seen birds around in my yard dead.
I
Well, they would
I have a
they
freezer
wouldn't eat
full in there where they get intoxicated on the berries and then fly into the walls and fly into the windows and die.
That's what's
So
wrong
that's
with
what
them.
happens to them?
That's I've had that.
I have had that happen
Yeah.
too. Blue jay.
So what I try to do is, we've got a big patch at the end of this building that's going to come out with the remodel. I try to go in and remove all the berries before winter time, so they're not
Okay.
feasting on those berries.
Okay.
But Nandina is very, very bad for wildlife. Nothing eats the plant, but the birds eat the berries and it intoxicates them. So,
Do the birds know that and
No.
avoid them?
and it really works on waxwings. Waxwings love them. And the waxwings are beautiful birds. Waxwings just pile in on them. That's a Nandina. The closest Nandinas are across that building that were planted. So you can see how far it's spread. And it's probably spread here by bird. They're all down through here. As we get around these pines and cedars, it's a good roosting area, so I get more and more bases popping up with birds. You see more mahonia coming up back there?
Yeah.
Started to form a little thicket of mahonia. See, they're getting quite tall. They asked about honeysuckle. It's becoming established down here. There's another mahonia. Another critter. Here we have the Japanese honeysuckle. As you can see, it's starting to get into this white pine. That makes its way quite a ways up into the white pine. It's hanging down way up there. But the bad thing about this is people plant honeysuckle, and they plant the Japanese when there are native species to plant.
Is that the Japanese?
This is the Japanese. Yeah. And if I let this go, it will take that tree over.
So how do you get rid of it? You pull it, or do you ever use weed?
Okay. I always spray. And what I do is I wouldn't just come here and spray. I will trace this back to where I can cut it off the ground, and then I spray that stump. So I hack and squirt. I don't just foliar spray anything. It's all hack and squirt.
What's
And
happens for?
I hack the plant down, and then I squirt the exposed surface. Yeah.
Oh, so
Hack and squirt.
you use a spray that affects the
No, but you knew what it was.
trunk, not the leaves. Then
Well-
I always thought you had to do the leaves.
In some sprays you do, some sprays you don't. But even Roundup, which is a foliar spray, usually there are stump applications
Now, I
for it.
heard if you just wait 2 weeks after you cut it, you can spray when a little bit of growth comes back.
Well, that's going back through the leaves again. If you want to kill it immediately, you've got to cut it as soon, spray it as soon as you cut it,
Oh,
and it
really?
will draw it into it.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you let that scab over, spraying that stump will do you no good. I actually make tools for it where you girdle the tree with a tool, and then you spray that girdled area, and it will kill the tree. So if you have a very large tree, something like Tree of Heaven, which is another bad invasive, I don't want to go cut that tree, because everywhere there's a root, I'll get plants coming back. And I'm battling for years. So I'll take that, girdle it, spray that trunk, and in 3 months, the tree roots and all are dead.
When you say girdle it, you cut all around the edge?
Cut all the way around it, through the cambium into the dead wood, and then spray that area, just like if you cut it off a stump. Because on a tree, the only thing that's living is the outer edge, the cambium, just beneath the bark. Everything behind that is dead. So if I cut through that and spray it, it will pull that poison into it.
A chainsaw?
You can do it with a chainsaw. They actually make a tool that looks, it's kind of like a hook like that, and I can take it and scrape all the way around it, and then spray that just with
Also,
an
it's just a
injector.
scrape, it really isn't a big cut.
It is a cut. It's got to be in there 1/2 inch or so. It's got to be through the living layer of the tree. So can I borrow one of your discs here? So, for example, on this tree, I would have to cut that deep.
Okay.
Because the only part that's living on this tree is this outer ring out here, under the bark. So I'd cut that deep and then spray that, and like we have micro injectors that look like a little needle. I can spray it and get poison nowhere else, just on that species, just on that tree. So,
And the precautions you personally would take
Yes.
would be a mask and
Mask.
the gloves and the,
long sleeve shirt, long pants, something over my eyes. Yeah, take your own PPE. And watch your wind drift. Wind drift's the biggest problem with any kind of pesticide. So don't do it on a windy day. I wouldn't even dream of doing it right now. Don't do it when you're gonna waste it. I'm not gonna do it when it's getting ready to rain. And then target specific plants. I try to avoid foliar spray at any cost.
Tell me, how can I get rid of trumpet vine in my school garden? I don't use Roundup.
Pull it.
Look, we dug down
The trumpet-
12 or more inches and finally just had to cut it off. Do you know,
If you had
the
sprayed that
next
stuff.
2 years, it came back in 6 places around that area.
If I was doing it in a schoolyard, I would go in and I would dig down around it 6 inches, cut it off, spray that, and then put the dirt back on.
Okay.
That way
That's
you
a
kill
good
the root
idea.
system and
Okay.
you've covered this poison from anybody that might get into it.
And that won't hurt, that won't make the, I would have not thought that, I would have thought that would have made the poison ineffective for us.
Well, there are some, you'll have to read up on what type of herbicide you're using. Some are deactivated by water, some are deactivated by sunlight, some are deactivated by soil contact. You just have to read up on the type of pesticide that you're using.
Okay.
Other question, I wish I could go show you our native area out there, but it's pouring
I
now.
wish we could go
But I can
see
show you
it.
some of the plants we put in.
Yes.
One of my favorites.
American Beautyberry. I
I
have my first one of those.
Well, if you get a chance to come back up and look around, we've got American Beauty Berries planted all out in the front and to the side of the administration building here. Another one we have is American Serviceberry or Allegheny Serviceberry. So we get a beautiful bloom, then we get beautiful fruits.
Which one is it?
Oh, a serviceberry.
Serviceberry.
Yeah.
So we get a nice white bloom, and then in the fall,
That's pretty.
It sure is.
we get a nice fruit on the trees as well. That are pretty.
Better
Yeah,
than
it
autumn olive.
Better than autumn olive. Yeah, and it's not gonna spread on us, it's gonna be nice and pretty. Other things we've done out front, we've got river birches out front.
I love
I'm trying to think what else they planted out there, but we went with all natives. If you came in this side of campus, you noticed a bunch of tree stumps down through there. Those were all Bradford pears. But they're gone. They keep calling me, I am the sole member of the tree campus committee. Can we cut this tree? Can we? I said, if it's a Bradford pear, cut it. Cut it and kill it. Now they've got to remove the stumps, and those, we're going back in there with all native trees, native oaks that will line that boulevard now. So there are a lot of options. People don't usually do it because our non-native plants grow faster. You don't have to worry about insects eating them. You don't have to worry about most animals eating them. But given time and patience, you can do just the same thing with native plants and not have to worry about problems. It has opened up.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
and I chose to leave my umbrella in the car.
It won't last long, I hope. So does anybody have any other questions for me? I don't have a whole lot more since we can't walk out to our native gardens.
What about getting rid of weed bindweed, B-I-N-D, bind?
Oh, what's it in?
In my flower, daylilies,
Yeah, so you don't want to kill your daylilies.
right, so I have to go in there and just chop it. But if I could find some of that in Forster, I could
You should have told us about that.
There are,
I'm on a hunt for enforcer now.
Yeah, where'd you
Well,
buy it?
in here, in this book, they're going to give you, I think, a list of, they got a lot of do not plants.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, in the back it says do not plant this, do not plant this, do not plant this. I'm trying to find, oh, there it was. And it talks about different spraying techniques. Okay. So on pages 15 and 16, they have lists of foliar activated herbicides in this one. And more foliar and soil active herbicides. You can spray the soil around the plant. Trying to see if they have any others.
Wisteria. Oh.
I hate wisteria. I've already said if anybody ever makes me mad, I'm gonna smile at them and go plant wisteria in New York.
You know, I'm from South Alabama and I can totally understand that, but in April,
Oh, it's
oh,
absolutely
it
gorgeous.
is so beautiful.
Well, that's like the Polonia tomosa. Did I say it right, Robert?
Polonia tomentosa.
Tomatosa tree. You know, the
Princess
ones
tree.
in the spring, and they have the beautiful purple, and they're cone-shaped flowers, no
They're
leaves.
invasive too.
I wanted one, I went on the hunt for one, and then I was looking on the internet, and I said, don't plant this tree, don't plant this tree. And I'm like, why? I love them, they're beautiful, I'm gonna plant it anyway. But then the more I looked, the more I said, don't do it, don't. So
Go
I
on
didn't-
I-40 in the spring and just see them all on the sides of the woods.
Yes, there's so.
There's a plantation just north of here, just past Sweetwater on the right. A guy planted a whole hillside of them because there are people that will tell you there's a market for the wood. It's very, very soft wood. It's great for carving. Have you ever seen a kid do a karate demonstration break a board?
Oh.
That's what they're breaking. It's
Oh.
Polonia because it's super soft. And so people plant them thinking, I'm going to make money, because they grow extremely fast. I mean, it's 20 feet tall in the first year with leaves that big around. But no, once they start producing seeds, they're producing millions of seeds that are wind-borne, like a dandelion seed, and they'll blow everywhere. Drive up the Ocoee Gorge, they're on the rock slides, and anywhere that there's disturbance, because the seeds they'll lie dormant in the soil for decades. So,
And everything below them, underneath them dies, so.
well, they produce, they're named tomentosa, they're tomentose, they're hairy and they're sticky. And all that drips down and kills everything under them. They're a really bad tree. Really bad tree. I go out at different times of the year when I'm going to a property I manage, go at different times because just walking through the woods, I may miss a tree of heaven or I may miss a Polonia or whatever. But if I know when they're blooming, or like right now, if I want to find a tree of heaven, I can smell it. It smells like burnt peanut butter. So if you're around them, you can
Do you
smell
have
it.
a picture
I
of
do.
tree of heaven?
By the way, before I get to, these are just some examples. Garlon is another herbicide, but you can look it up and find these herbicides. They're much more potent than anything you would buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. You can get them at places like Tractor Supply or Rural King Co-op and mix it lower concentration. They're super potent herbicides.
Is the Bio Advanced?
Well, that's a brand
That's
name.
Lowe's, but it's cheap.
Uh,
That doesn't work.
no, this is,
Don't get that one.
no, that brush killer, that's nothing but a Roundup at a higher concentration. That's all it is. Or it may not be Roundup since it's Bayer, but no. So when you're look for things that have an EDU extension, it's from University of Alabama, so the controlled privet. They're going to talk about ways to do it and herbicides, and they'll usually give you the exact herbicide treatment to use. So this one, do not use glyphosate formulations. They're called ready to use. In other words, you have to get ones that you have to mix because it's not a strong enough concentration. So whatever your problem plant is, look it up. And I guarantee there's an extension service in some state that says use this on it. And then timing is very important. And sometimes of the year, it doesn't matter what you spray, it's not going to kill it. And then other times, if you spray it to kill it, it might cause root sprouting. And then there may be other more effective or cheaper techniques. Fire is a great technique for controlling a lot of things. But I wouldn't use fire on privet because privet will just come back in abundance after fire. But if I want to get rid of tall fescue, which is another invasive plant, fire works great on it.
Now someone gave me this cute little plant, this vine, vetch.
Vetch, yeah.
Hairy vetch is okay, what's the other vetch?
It's-
There's crown vetch.
Crown vetch.
Yeah.
It's got a pretty little red flower. It's
That was
covering
my bane.
all my beds, and it's a lot of work
Crown
to
Yeah.
keep pulling. They're everywhere.
Vetch is a great forage plant for cattle. I do not recommend anybody planting anything else.
I wish I'd never planted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't get rid of it.
So,
How
yeah.
do I get rid of it?
Now vetch is in the bean family, so regular Roundup should work on it just fine. Just take care of it. Typically, you can look at a plant, if it has a very tough leathery leaf or a coated leaf, it's very hard to kill. An exposed leaf, soft leaf like on the vetch, usually pretty easy to kill because
Okay.
that will go right through it.
Yeah.
But where people make a mistake, and this talks about it, they oftentimes don't put what's called surfactant in the spray, and that makes it stick. It's something that makes it stick to it. Some are oil-based, some are water-based, some are non-ionic surfactants, what have you. So that's going to make it stick to the plant and be taken in by the plant. And a lot of your ready-to-use stuff's just too weak. It's just too weak. So if you think about it, I can go to Lowe's and I can buy Roundup concentrate in a small bottle, and it costs me $100. But I can make 100 gallons of spray with it. Whereas 1 gallon costs me $20. And this I can mix to any strength I want to. So, but yeah, I use a lot of sprays because, and I use them tactically, if you will. I would go right to the plant, not just spraying willy-nilly like you would a crop field.
One last thing is poison ivy and poison oak.
Yeah, those are all.
We have poison ivy. We don't have poison oak.
Oh, okay.
But they're native. They're fantastic wildlife foods. Birds eat the berries, deer eat the leaves. I understand you want to control it. The best way to do that is a really strong glyphosate, a really strong Roundup. Will control it.
It's a foliar,
It's foliar spray.
Just like paint it, like you can paint it on there, can you?
Yeah, or you can spray it. You spray it on. Usually if I'm trying to control poison ivy, I won't pull it out of a tree or anything like that. I'll cut it at the tree trunk and spray it.
all right, what is the name of, what words did you use for that spray that you spray on roots or?
Enforcer?
No,
Well,
that was a name brand,
yeah.
but the type that you spray on a wooden.
It depends on what I'm trying to control is which spray I use. So it depends on which plant you're trying to control as to which one you use. Glyphosate or Roundup is used on a lot of different things. So it can be used as a stem treatment in the right concentration. But I might go with something else like the Garlon or the Enforcer or something along those lines. They're a different chemical. And they're a lot stronger chemical.
And the word though that you're looking for, see, that says foliar
Foliar.
herbicide treatment, but the words we want is
This is a cut stump.
Stump,
Yeah,
cut
hack and
stump.
squirt, that's a cut stump treatment for this one. So, in this one, it says 41% glyphosate or 44% tricloperamine. So two different chemicals at different concentrations would have to be used in this. If you think about 44% glyphosate, when you can buy that concentrate at Lowe's, it's $100 a bottle, that's just 56%. So you're not cutting it much at all. So it can be, to remove privet, to kill it and remove it costs about $10,000 an acre. That's about what it runs. When you figure in labor, herbicides, everything along those lines, it's about $10,000 an acre. Go to Booker T. Washington in State Park in Chattanooga and ask them about controlling privet. They've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars trying to control privet down
Well, don't the state and national parks go in and try to eradicate
there. Yes.
non-native species?
Yes, as a matter of fact, my interns, I hire 4 to 6 interns a year that work for the U.S. Forest Service. So they work on the forest for the Forest Service personnel that are employed by me. And the majority of their job is invasive plant control. They do a lot of privet control, kudzu control, honeysuckle control, paulownia control, tree of heaven control, which reminds me somebody asked to see tree of heaven. Okay. I'm going to show this one because this is where the problem comes in with tree of heaven. On the left is a native sumac. On the right is a native black walnut. In the middle is tree of heaven.
Oh my.
Okay, tree of heaven is very easy to identify. That's a single leaf from each of them. And so these are leaflets. At the base of the leaflet on tree of heaven, there is a little notch. little wing right there, a little notch at the base of every leaflet on Tree of Heaven. There is not on sumac and there is not on black walnut. Plus, Tree of Heaven has a very distinct odor. I mean, it's a nauseating odor. It's somewhere between burnt peanut butter and a wet ashtray. Okay, so you know when you're in Tree of Heaven. It
Why did
stinks.
they name it that in the first place?
That I can't figure out. I can't figure out why it ever got named Tree of Heaven.
Now, is this a shrub or
This is a big tree.
it's a big
They get to be
tree?
big trees. We've got one on campus that is probably about 50 feet tall.
Maybe that's why they called it there. It looked like it was gonna grow to heaven.
But this will give you an example. Yeah, I stand beside one. We've got one on campus about that size. Got a very slick white bark to it, a grayish bark to it. But you see next to that one, and right in front of it is another one coming up. That's a small one growing right in front of it. But these things, they produce a winged seed, like maples. And so they blow in the wind and travel a long ways. They're a pretty big seed, but they spread very, very well. And if you just go in and cut that tree, then it's going to root sprout. If I go in and burn that area, it's going to root sprout. So I've got to kill it, then remove it.
Now, how do you
With
get
your
rid of the
finger
black
on it.
walnut? I've got that
I
on.
don't want to get rid of black walnuts. They're next to impossible to get rid of unless you spray, because they do what's called coppice regeneration, which means if you cut it down, it sprouts back from the stump.
So, the enforcer,
Well, Roundup will do it.
Roundup,
Yeah, Roundup will do it. Yeah, we have one at my mom's house next to the deck, next
it's
to the
all
steps.
along the fence and it,
So I have to cut it off, and with a fresh cut, go in and spray the stump.
My friend has one of those locusts, whatever, that has the long thorns.
Honey locust.
Honey locust, yes, that's it. Is there a key to getting rid of those?
Isn't that native there? I
It
know
is
like
native.
it. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Oh, they hate it.
Oh yeah, people do hate them because their thorns are big enough to punch your trachea.
Exactly.
But that's a honey locust trunk.
Mhm.
And they're called Gleditsia triacanthos. Those thorns come out and they split 3 different directions.
oh my goodness.
And they're extremely tough. They're modified branches, not modified leaves, so they don't come off easy. They're stuck to the tree as strong as a branch is. Again, same way, cut them down and spray them. But locusts are notorious for never rotting. I actually have a place in Roane County in the fence row. The farmer came in and he had a line of locust trees for his bees. He just cut them off and put the fence on them. They never once sprouted back. But they're hard to get rid of. And when I go mow, if I skip mowing for 2 or 3 weeks, I have locust trees coming up in my yard. They grow very quickly. But I usually don't try to get rid of locusts. They're great for bees. They're fantastic for bees. Makes great honey. The seed pods on them are very large, and they're good food for a lot of animals. So,
But isn't there another native locust?
there is black
That's what I
locust.
thought. Yeah, that's what we had across there.
Black locust, honey locust has these huge thorns,
Yeah.
and this is in a different genus, Robinia.
Oh, okay.
So it's really a totally different tree, even though it's called locust. But on this one, oh, I saw it. Where was it?
Oh, look at those bean pods.
Yeah, they have big bean pods. This one always has a pair of thorns right at the leaf base. Doesn't get those great big long thorns like the honey locust does. Just a single pair of thorns. And these leaves are smaller on this one. But they do produce those big bean pods that are great food for wildlife. I usually don't try to kill locusts. I keep them mowed down in my yard, but I don't try to kill them out in the woods or anything. And if you cut one, if one falls over, it won't rot. They don't rot for ages.
I'm sure she'll be so thrilled to hear that.
Yeah. But I found some in Cherokee National Forest, some, I guess they were black locusts, but they're about 5 feet diameter.
Whoa,
It's in areas, loggers just skipped them.
they skip them?
Yeah.
Because of the thorns.
Well, would you like to be the one that had to cut that down?
Yeah, but I mean, they're way back in what is now a wilderness area, but it wasn't a wilderness area
But you're
then.
talking about black locust.
Black locusts,
Yeah.
they're humongous. So they have good uses. They were traditionally used for fence posts and things like that. They're rot resistant, insect resistant. I try not to kill locusts. But I do go through the woods and select the non-wildlife beneficial trees or trees that are overabundant and remove them individually. So I'll oftentimes go through and remove maples to get oak regeneration in the area, because oak produces a lot more food for wildlife than maples do.